Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am delighted to introduce my guest today, Jamie Lee. Jamie is an executive coach who helps smart folks who hate office politics get promoted and better paid without throwing anyone under the bus. In her practice, she blends the best of proven negotiation strategies with evidence-based neuroplasticity tools so her clients lead and advocate with confidence and ease. A South Korean immigrant, Jamie first learned the value of self-advocacy from the example of her mother, who single-handedly raised 3 daughters while running a nail salon and speaking broken English in New Jersey. Over a decade, Jamie has trained thousands of professionals in effective self-advocacy and workplace negotiation at leading organizations, including Smith College, Executive Education, Citi, Unilever, Jeffries, and UC Berkeley School of Business, among others. Please join me in welcoming Jamie Lee. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me, Tammy.
I am delighted to have you, and I want to welcome you from your home office in Manhattan in New York. Thank you for being here. So as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning. So take us back to your formative years and how they may or may not have formed where you are today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We are going to go on the other side of the globe. I was born in Seoul, South Korea in the 80s. And it absolutely has an impact on the work I do because I work primarily with women, people of color, immigrants like myself, people who feel marginalized from the centers of power at companies inside corporations. And when I think about my very, very formative years, I noticed that I was born in South Korea at the time when the country was just going from a poor developing nation right before it started to develop extremely fast. Now it's one of the developed nations. And also in the 80s was when there were a lot of pro-democracy student protests.
Oh.
So I remember being a very young girl and watching the news and noticing all the protests, the Molotov cocktails and the student marches and the thick the gas, the tear gas in the air, right? Because there was so much political turbulence, as well as economic change in the country. So that's where I was born.
Wow.
And I immigrated to America in 1989 when I was 7 years old, right after the Seoul 1988 Olympics. And yes, I am a first generation immigrant. I am an ESL, English as a Second Language student. I feel more American than Korean because now I've spent more of my life. I spent the majority of my life since I came here as a kid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I went into the workplace, there were all these cultural differences, cultural nuances, cultural shorthands that I didn't know. And I felt like I am having so much trouble fitting in. I feel so much anxiety as a person who wasn't born into this, culture and didn't have an uncle who, had a white collar job. And so you read the bio where I mentioned my mother.
Sure.
And I grew up watching my parents work extremely hard as immigrants. They ran a store before they split up. And then my mom started running a nail salon. But I just didn't have a concrete concept of what it was to become a professional, to work in offices until I went to Smith College, until I graduated. And I had to learn all these different shorthands, the unwritten rules, the hard way.
That's interesting that I'm just curious to just go back a step or two, whether there were things that you learned, maybe obviously they were very different than what you learned when you first entered, the workforce after college. Were there must have been things that you learned that were very culturally different, just all the years you went to school, from age 7 onward. I mean, you said you were an ESL student, so I'm sure that there were obviously there was a huge learning curve there, right? But I'm curious because you had, the better part of your, early education or most of your education in the US. So you had an introduction to the culture there, but yet there was even this more stark contrast, it sounds like, that you experienced once you went into the workforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. When you're a hyphenated identity, like Korean American or what have you, it's almost like you're constantly straddling two different cultures because you go to school as a kid and you learn to speak English and you learn to do your homework and you learn to be a good student and get along with the kids or hide in the background, be an introvert, be a wallflower, which I was.
I see.
And you go home and it's a completely different cultural context where you literally speak a different language and you talk about different things and the expectations are completely different in how you relate to one another. And did it make me more flexible and resilient and adaptable? Of course. But did it also create a bit of unease, like ill at ease, right? In either context. And I have several clients who are also first generation immigrant or children of immigrants like I am. And they also struggle with this feeling like almost as if they don't know how to just fit in, especially when it's not just work. Give them a spreadsheet, give them a project to run, and they will, run a marathon with it. They will, excel. But you just have them, what do we say? What's the politically correct way to say it? Or how do I say this without cursing? Chit chatting. There you go. Just chit chatting.
Small talk.
Small talk. Right. Yeah. And small talk is really important for your career growth. Small talk is really important for networking, for becoming a known entity. And for some people like me and some of my clients, that small talk is where we struggle. And then we start thinking, oh, I hate office politics. I can't stand this.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what are the right and the wrong ways to do it? Somebody just give me a cheat sheet. Someone tell me the framework so I don't feel so anxious and uncomfortable just trying to get along.
Well, did you find that even as a kid, some of that was difficult too? I mean, clearly as a kid, you didn't have office politics, but you might have had playground politics there's all kinds of things like that. But I also think that most introverts, and I'm not trying to distinguish that you weren't different because it's clear you had a very different experience. Introverts by nature don't like small talk or office politics, but I could see where in essence, it's like you had that discomfort, times two, between coming from, a very different, distinct culture and then on top of it being someone who was more on the more introverted side, right? So both growing up and then going to college and and into the workforce. So I'm curious if that also impacted maybe some of the choices you made early in your career as well, in terms of the kinds of things that you did.
So yes to all of that. Yes.
Okay.
When I was a little kid, I was definitely an introvert and I kept to myself. I was a bit of a loner.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really play any sports. Didn't really go out in the weekends. It sounds sad, but
I've had a number of guests who describe themselves that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it worked because I'm also a highly sensitive person who has a rich imagination. And so I savor my alone time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got into the workplace, I think your question was, did that impact how I showed up? And did it impact my choices?
Sure.
And yeah, in the beginning, when I was fresh out of college, I didn't have a role model. I didn't have like somebody telling me, oh, this is how you network. This is how you use your connections to secure an internship somewhere. So in the beginning, I was just like, let's just try everything and anything.
Oh.
And I initially got a job as a receptionist at an international government organization. And I got that job because I speak Korean and I studied Japanese at college. And I was able to submit a job application in Japanese.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that was a really cool institution. Unfortunately, their mission was to build a nuclear power reactor in North Korea.
Oh goodness.
Right. This is way before the Bush administration. This is something that President Clinton had sent former President Jimmy Carter to broker this deal, and a promise that they would not build more nuclear weapons. But as we all know, they did not uphold that promise. And so the entire institution came to a standstill when President Bush was reelected, and he made the comments about North Korea being one of the axis of evil. And North Koreans were like, well, out with all of you. And they kicked the team that was going to give them a sustainable source of power.
Mm-hmm.
But in that little time I got to spend at that organization, first of all, there wasn't a lot of work to do. So I didn't enjoy that, even though I'm an introvert and I got plenty of quiet time. It was way too much quiet time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just great to get exposed to a different world of diplomacy, of people who travel, who wine and dine and talk nice.
Mm-hmm. Was that in Washington? Was the organization in Washington, or?
The organization was actually headquartered in New York City.
Oh, okay.
And it was staffed by diplomats from around the world. So there were Japanese diplomats, there were Europeans, American, South Korean, which were the major countries that supported this short-lived project. And that was really cool. That was really cool. The concept of the organization was really exciting for me. I was really excited to do something that was going to make an impact in the Korean Peninsula, because obviously I'm of South Korean descent.
Sure.
But that didn't live long. And then after that, I worked as a procurement agent for one of the vendors, the heavy equipment providers for that international organization. And
so that's kind of a network. You kind of networked your way into that role.
Yeah, I did that. Right. It happened unwittingly.
Well, most things do when it comes to networking, and people don't realize when they happen to know someone through a job they're already in or some kind of a connection. And then next thing you know, somebody's saying, oh, we need some help over here. Would you like to join us? And I've had people who come to me and they say, well, I haven't really applied for a job in many years because one thing led to another. I kind of cheated, they say to me. And I say, that's not cheating. That's networking. You just don't call it networking because you didn't put a certain type of, uncomfortable effort into it that people think networking requires, when in fact, networking can look like a lot of different things. And so that's a perfect story of networking. So you became a procurement agent. I'm just curious, what did you study as an undergrad?
I studied East Asian studies.
Oh, okay.
But mostly I learned to speak, write, read Japanese. Spent a year abroad in Tokyo. And I didn't know what I was going to do after college, but I wanted to learn something that was useful, and learning a language seemed something that would have practical use. And it did help me secure my first full-time job in a roundabout way. So what had happened was I applied to the job, procurement job, and then it was the hiring manager who noticed. They're like, oh, you work for the Korean Peninsula Energy Development Organization. Yes, we were the turnkey provider for that organization. That's cool. And that's sort of how I got my foot in that door. And that was a really interesting experience, because as a Korean American person, I got the opportunity to work inside a South Korean corporation.
Oh, okay.
And encountered the kind of office politics that I'm allergic to.
Okay.
And I guess this is sort of like a different version of failing up, because every time I encountered something that I really didn't enjoy, that sort of gave me the impetus and the motivation to do the work that I'm doing now, about a decade later, when I realized, no, I've had all these pain points. I bet there are other people who experience similar pain points. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the distinction is, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of this too, is that some people just go on and continue to tolerate the pain points, thinking they have to stick it out for some reason, and don't think that, oh, maybe I could move to something that sits a little better with me than this situation, right? So how long were you with that organization, that South Korean corporation?
Not very long, for about a year.
Okay.
Yeah. And they had very stereotypical of Asian conglomerates. They had a very top-down approach to management. And just didn't feel like you were being treated very well. And after that, I moved to a US-based organization. I guess you could call it a lateral move. And I was a buyer for a beauty company. So complete switch, 180-degree change in industry, but the job itself was very similar. Negotiating with vendors, which I really enjoyed.
So basically you started looking for something new and then moved from one job to the next, it sounds like. Yeah. So you became a buyer with the beauty company, and take us forward from there. Sure.
That was a lot of fun. Completely different culture. No, toxic office politics as I had experienced at the bigger Korean corporation. And I really enjoyed getting on the phone, talking with vendors, learning about, how the business operates, and, negotiating deals to help save the company money. And I think that was one of the experiences that also informs the work I do, because I didn't know that you have to ask for the promotion and the raise you want. I was very young, in my 20s. Like, if I just hustle and do good work, and I was born in South Korea, and, many immigrants share this ethos of you just keep your head down and do good.
Right.
You're nodding your head. So it's not just immigrants, like so many of us, especially our parents and the older generation, they've taught us this concept that you don't make waves.
Right. People will notice your good work and then they will just poof, promote you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was years later that I encountered Carol Frolinger's book. And I also read Women Don't Ask by, I believe, Sarah Lashover. I'm forgetting the other co-author's name. But there's this concept that Carol Frolinger came up with, which is tiara syndrome.
Oh, tiara syndrome?
Familiar? Are you familiar with this?
I am not actually. So tell me.
So tiara syndrome is just as we were talking about, when you believe that if you keep your head down and do good work, some fictional or mythical, benevolent, all-knowing authority figure,
or a prince,
or prince,
right,
often in the Disney fairy tales,
right,
they will award you with a tiara, that you will be recognized. And it's something that a lot of women experience because we're socialized to not seek the spotlight.
Right.
We're socialized to not be quote unquote selfish, and to expect that external validation. Even though when you hear it explained this way, you're like, oh yeah. No, even career is not a 90s Disney fairy tale.
Nope. I've read about this phenomenon. I just never heard it called that. But I mean, I think it's very common. And yet I can see where in certain cultures, it's even more ingrained across the culture. So how long had you been at this company when you it sounds like at some point you did realize, oh, I might have to ask. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I kind of feel like we're doing a job interview right now. You're like, we're walking through my resume, which is phenomenal, which is great. Yeah. But the reason why I shared about the tiara syndrome is because I was there about 2 years, and I was really proud. So young, so naive. What do they say? Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I came up with this volume buy plan that was going to save the company a nice chunk of change. It was more than twice my salary back then.
Wow.
And I mean, I wasn't making a ton of money, but I'm like, of course they're going to give me a promotion now. I don't have to ask for that. They have me come into the executive team leadership meeting and do a whole, show and dance and present my plan. I'm like, everyone's impressed with this. I just have to sit pretty and they're going to give me a promotion and raise. And of course it didn't happen.
Oh, wow. Well, I can understand you having that expectation, especially at that younger age, right?
Yeah. And so after that, I'm kind of a searcher. So I was talking to my colleague at that organization, and this colleague gave me this throwaway advice. This was more than a decade ago. And the colleague said, you could post your resume on Craigslist. Tammy's eyes just went really big.
I know. People can't see me. But yeah, I went, really? That's an interesting concept. Okay. So what happened? So did you do that?
I did. Okay. Oh my goodness. This is more than 15 years ago now.
Okay.
And so I did post my resume on Craigslist, and I got a call from an Asian equities hedge fund.
Huh.
And this was the summer of 2008, before the Great Recession started.
Oh boy.
Exactly. And I was offered a junior analyst role, even though I have zero math and finance skills. He said, you have these language skills. You obviously can learn really fast. Come over here and help us organize these like events, and the event trading strategy, because what they were doing was they were keeping abreast of certain economic events as well as leaks in the news. And they needed somebody to just stay alert and keep an eye on the news. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm now realizing that's a job they can now outsource to AI.
Well, that it's a very different time now, right?
Yeah, it's a different time now. But yeah, I got a job at the Asian Equities Hedge Fund.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was there again for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
During the height of the recession.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of miraculous that I got a job in finance and I kept a job in finance.
That's amazing.
When most of the people who were doing really well at these well-established organizations were losing their jobs left and right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I bet you learned a lot during that time.
I learned a lot. And I learned that I really didn't enjoy working at a hedge fund.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
yeah. So how did you come to your next pivot then? What was, clearly you realized you didn't enjoy it. Was it yet another office politics kind of situation, or was it actually the work itself that just was so different for you? You didn't enjoy it?
It was more of the former. I was the only woman working at the trading desk, and the atmosphere and the culture of the workspace was not friendly. Women.
Okay.
I would say hostile.
Oh, wow. That's no fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was through this experience I learned sexual harassment isn't just you being touched inappropriately. Sexual harassment is when the work environment, when people making comments, the conversations make you so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? That you feel kind of singled out, and that it's not a friendly work environment for a person who is of a different gender, person who is not like most other people.
Wow. And I can imagine this must have been quite a trigger for you, having left the previous job where, even though you were disappointed you weren't getting promoted, it sounded like you were relatively happy there.
Yeah.
And also to be in another situation where you felt like you were kind of on the outside looking in some ways. Probably, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounded like there were times earlier in your life where you felt that way as well.
Thank you. Thank you for reflecting that. Yeah. And so, by then I'm like, why am I so unhappy? And so, if anyone's listening to this and they've been unhappy in their careers and they're like, why is it me?
Yeah.
I had that thought a lot when I was there. And what I recognized later on after I left that situation isn't that there was something wrong with me. It wasn't that I was doing something wrong. It was just my brain was internalizing those experiences. And then I was having this unintentional habituated pattern, a pattern that I didn't opt into, I didn't consciously choose, but an unconscious pattern of second guessing, doubting myself.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now that experience informs a lot of the work I do.
Sure.
Because every time I talk to a person who is a woman, someone who is of marginalized identity, whether they are a person of color or they're, in any invisible way, because there are invisible differences too.
Right.
whether you're neurodivergent, it's so easy for us to internalize a flawed society, a biased society, and make that mean there's something wrong with us.
Yeah. And I've seen that with people who just end up in a situation where they're just not being treated well.
Yeah.
In general, and they start to look at what's wrong with them. They turn on people turn on themselves very, very easily.
Yeah.
And you were still also very young at that time.
I was.
Yet you stuck it out for 2 years. I would imagine that was going on for a while before you decided to leave.
Right.
And so when you decided to leave that situation, how long did it take you to actually depart?
It took me a couple of months. And what turned everything around was reading a New York Times article about a group of women investors who invest in women-led companies. And this organization is called Golden Seeds, and it is the first angel fund to focus solely on women-led companies. And when I read that, so many things, so many like themes of my life converged. My mom was an entrepreneur. I'm from a family of 4 women. I'm one of 3 sisters. I went to Smith College. We have many prominent feminists who graduated from our school. And I was just in that hedge fund. So I was getting exposed to the investing world. And so when I read that, every fiber in my being, like, that's where I want to go. That's who I want to be connected to. That's who I want to be working with. I don't know exactly how. I'm not an accredited investor just yet, but there's gotta be a way. So I did something that I had never done before. I cold wrote them a letter. I just pitched them. I said, I read what you're doing, and I worked on this letter for days. And I tried to perfect this pitch. And of course, it's an angel fund. They don't have a lot of money. They don't really hire people. I didn't know that. They said, well, we don't have the wherewithal to hire anyone, but if you'd like to do an internship, you can come and be our MBA analyst intern. So I did that. I did a mid-career pivot with an unpaid internship.
Now you say mid-career, you were still in your 20s.
Yeah, I was in my late 20s.
Okay.
You're right. And
so, I mean, unless you were planning on retiring, by the age of 40 or something.
I say mid-career because I wasn't actually a student then.
Okay. But still, you were right. You were definitely doing it. Yes, I see what you're saying. I think when I think of mid-career, I think of somebody who's like, in their mid 40s and they're like in the middle of their career. But what you're saying is, I'm not a student, so I've already been out in the world for a while, a mid-career internship. Got it. All right. Never mind. So you did an internship with them. So were you still at the hedge fund while you were doing that?
I quit the hedge fund.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you.
So you quit the hedge fund and went and did the internship.
Yes.
Oh, that was a gutsy move.
Yes.
And probably a needed one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. It was scary, but
I'm sure.
But I knew I had to leave because I was starting to get sick again and again. And I heard recently that there is research that shows this is a very common experience, especially for women of color who experience what my mentor Lisa Gates has called a death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's a metaphor for the subtle biased comments, microaggressions, being left out of meetings and discussions and the promotion track and have to constantly prove yourself and people second guessing you no matter how much you accomplish. And how could you not get sick
Right.
if you are internalizing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was the right thing for me to do.
Absolutely.
Not the orthodox or the conventional thing to do, but it did lead to me connecting with angel investors.
Mm-hmm.
One of them actually hired me as a consultant. And then that led to me working in tech startups. So
Ah,
I guess what you would call a industry career hopper early in my career. Yeah.
that's great. So you were doing the internship and you met one of the angel investors who had an opportunity to connect you with.
That's right. That's right.
More networking, Jamie.
Yes. Yes. More networking. You're right.
So you were connected with a tech startup, and what were you hired to do with the tech startup?
I eventually landed a full-time job doing operations.
Ah,
So reports, HR,
ah,
finance,
huh.
um, even putting together presentations for the board advisors. Yeah.
I love it. I love there's a way in which you moved from one job to the next. You literally threw yourself into each of these situations in some ways, and you just learned what you needed to learn along the way. And unfortunately, at the hedge fund, it really took a toll. So
Yeah.
that's not good. Yet you every single role, it sounds like you just learned as you went along. You didn't have to have some big long resume with all these qualifications to get your foot in all these doors. You developed the right relationships. And although, I mean, I get a kick out of the Craigslist thing, that I've never heard of anyone doing that before. So
Well,
that's wonderful.
you're gonna get a laugh out of this. One of the tech jobs, that tech startup jobs, I got because I went to an acupuncturist.
Okay.
And that was because, again, I didn't have the coaching tools that I have now. I was carrying a lot of the stress and the anxiety in my body. So I had a stiff neck.
Mm.
And so the acupuncturist was asking, what's causing all this stress? She's like, she wanted to know what was behind it. So I told her, oh, I'm working at this place right now, but I don't really feel like it has a future. So I really want to get another job. I have some experience in finance and procurement. And she said, you should talk to my husband. He is the CFO of this tech company,
Oh,
and he's
goodness.
looking to hire.
I love it. I love it.
And that's where I interviewed for that job, got the job. Again, I think my middle name is Scrappy. So
Yeah, you know what though? You're proving the point. You're proving the point that this is really how it's not even just about networking. It's about showing up.
Mhm.
Showing up in different situations, and you were asked a question and you answered it honestly, and it was, you could say the right moment, the right time, and all of that, but it happened repetitively, right? So you do the internship at Golden Seeds, you meet the angel investor I'm not surprised to hear that you found an opportunity with one of the companies connected through Golden Seeds. I was kind of hoping you were going to say something like that, and you did. And then, we know startups are intense places, right? So I can see where, yeah, you got a stiff neck from working there. You go to the acupuncturist, and then, oh, well, look at that. Her husband's the CFO of a tech company. Amazing, but you still had to show up. You still had to tell, the acupuncturist what was going on. Then you still had to go to the interview and put your best foot forward in all these situations. So it's when I hear people say things like, I'm not saying that you're saying this, but I could imagine someone listening to this and saying, oh, she was so lucky, this and that. Well, this is how you create luck.
Mm.
It is luck to a degree, or what one of my former podcast guests, calls it serendipity.
Yeah, I do feel very, very lucky. I've been extremely fortunate in my career with all the serendipitous turns. But you're right. I mean, one way to think about it is I was open to those connections and those pivots.
Yeah.
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 And it was in that job with the acupuncturist husband, CFO,
Yeah.
where I'm like, okay, now I get it. I have to ask. I have to ask for the promotion. I have to ask for the raise.
Uh-huh.
And then that's when I started asking and started earning more and getting promoted.
So you learned how to ask and how to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long were you there for?
Oh, I think it was similar. I think it was about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I ended up working for couple of different startups. But again, I remembered, okay, you don't get if you don't ask. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you ask for. I believe that's the Chester Karras quote. And I just started to ask more. And also I got really interested in this field of entrepreneurship. And I love that people were giving back to the community. And there's like this like, if you can do something, let's do it culture. And I love that. So that's when I started organizing workshops and events to help women advocate, to help women better advocate and negotiate for themselves. And I learned women are excellent negotiators, but in our culture, in the Western culture, we don't really have this negotiating habit.
No.
Where I was born, I grew up watching my mom haggle and negotiate everything, from the price of rice to
the price of the market, squid. Right?
Yeah, you go to the market and everything's negotiable. And here, there's this almost we don't do that unless you were shopping at Sears in the years back when they would let you do that. So I started organizing these events where people just come together and let's just practice. What if that's the only thing we're missing here? What if we know the basic things, like we got to do some research, we got to ask. And the only component that was really missing is practice. So in the beginning, I thought it was just taking action that was what was needed for women to close the gender wage gap. Now, there's so much more to it than that.
Right.
But in the beginning, I was like, maybe it's as simple as we just practice more.
Well, I think practice helps a whole lot, for sure. And you still have to be in the right environment where you're going to be able to use those skills and actually get the results you want. And if you can't, then you do what you did, which was see you later. Bye.
Yeah.
Right. So along the way, you're in a number of different startups. You've got that, you're kind of in these very entrepreneurial environments as well. You've developed those muscles, and then you had it in you to want to teach it to other people. When did you decide that it was time to go more on your own and start your own practice?
Yes. So I was leading these workshops at like Barnard College. I would organize meetups on my own. And it was in 2016. So about 8 years ago that I decided to go full time doing this. I partnered up with an organization that no longer exists, but it was called She Negotiates. Are you familiar with She Negotiates?
No, I just love the sound of it.
Yeah. And it was founded by a former corporate lawyer and a marketing executive, and they were helping women negotiate their job offers. And what I did was I teamed up with them, and I also was consulting people one-on-one. doing more speaking and workshops. And this was a little bit before Lean In came out, or maybe it was around that time. Things have changed a lot since then.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's research from Haas School of Business from Berkeley that came out last year. They did another survey of the graduating class of MBAs, and they found that women are actually negotiating more than men. When I was starting out more than like a decade ago, it was the inverse of that. They had just published this research saying that graduating class of MBAs, the women weren't negotiating. It was like 55% men were negotiating, 35% women were negotiating, right? But now the latest research says that actually the graduating class, 2023 graduating class, females were 55% negotiating and men were 45%. So slightly less than half.
Interesting.
Yeah. But what is still true is that women are still being told no more and more, especially as women earn more. Yeah.
That's not good news. But I think part of the reason why women are negotiating more is I think that they're understanding they have to. And not to oversimplify this, but they have to more than men do, which is why more women are negotiating and fewer men are. The men don't have to negotiate as much to get where they want to go. I think that's one simplified answer to that. But so over time, you've built up a coaching practice. You consult, you speak, you've developed this leadership archetype quiz. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So long story short, I realized it wasn't just taking action. It was about changing our mindset. It was about rewriting the narrative. I mean, work from the inside out. Exactly that. It's like we have to work from the inside out because even if you have all of the knowledge and you know exactly what to do because you read 100 articles and 3 dozen books about negotiating, sometimes you don't take action to better lead, advocate, negotiate for yourself because your nervous system freezes up at the thought of sticking your neck out, speaking up, right? That's something a lot of people have experienced. And so I started to think about, okay, what else needs to change? It's not just these scripts. It's not just these how-tos. It's like we need to really change from the inside out.
Yeah.
That's why I became a coach. And that's why I teach my clients practical neuroscience tools to help rewire their brain from the inside out. And the leadership archetype quiz was just one, like a really fun jumping off point to get better insight into how might you thinking about yourself, how might you be approaching your career, your leadership, and how might that be coming off even without you being fully aware of it, and what might be some tactical, tangible steps that you can take to better address that. And so I wanted to make it something fun because so much of our careers can be kind of dry, boring, arduous, painful. I mean, I know about that, right? So that's why I created this archetype quiz. And when you take it, you answer questions that are sort of like, I didn't think about it that way, right? It's not going to be something so cut and dry, so obvious. A lot of people have fun taking it, and people often say, these results, they like really resonate.
Yeah. And I think it helps them to think about something about themselves. It resonates, but then they can connect that part of themselves with some kind of action. And really, that's, I really love the way you're helping people to make that connection, not just to say, well, in theory, I ought to be taking these actions, but then when they get into those situations, as you said, sometimes they freeze up, or they haven't made that inner connection that can really tie them to, why am I even doing this?
Right.
Or it's not just an intellectual thought, why am I doing this? It's almost a visceral, why am I doing this? Like a feeling.
Yeah.
And so if they have a little bit more of that connection to why they're doing what they're doing. And also, I think what you also said about getting practice, very, very important. So
Yeah.
if someone wanted to get more information about you and all the things that you're doing, what would be the best place for them to go? We'll have all of your social media links and everything in the show notes. What would be the best place, though, for them to go to start to reach out?
Sure. The best place to come would be my website, jamieleecoach.com, JAMIELEECOACH.com. And they can find all the social links, my podcast, blog posts, the quiz, lots of scripts and tips.
Wow.
Yeah.
But there's a lot there.
Yeah. Can I add something really quick?
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
So now, I mean, when I first started, I was about actions and, how to negotiate. But now I really focus more on these self-directed neuroplasticity tools.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, exactly as we talked about, sometimes making that connection happens at a cognitive level, but it really needs to happen at an unconscious level, right? Where our unconscious patterns of freezing up lie. Whether that is freezing up or shutting down or getting really angry or avoiding certain conversations altogether, right? That's not usually that's not a conscious thing. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. It's an unconscious pattern. And so for that reason, instead of just having people do the work or practice over and over again, right?
Right.
Now I have my clients do more of a mental rehearsal. And mental rehearsal is something that gold-winning Olympians use. And research has shown that when that is the only variable, it can improve performance by up to 37%.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's helping people get to a relaxed state, down-regulate their nervous system so they can really imagine themselves being the change that they want, more calm, more grounded, more confident. And the more often people do the mental rehearsal, the more easily they find themselves taking action, as opposed to sheer willpower. It just becomes something that you naturally walk yourself into.
Right. It's a much smoother process that way. It starts to actually feel like it's a part of you rather than something that you are compartmentalizing into yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I know that you also do offer consultations as well. People can find that through your website as well.
Yes.
So if they want to learn more about that, they can. This is amazing, fascinating. And with people understanding and knowing that, you've been there and you've done that. You've been through your paces to get to where you are. So it really helps, I think, when they speak to you, knowing that you're not just talking about this academically. You've been there, Yeah. So this is great. So one last question, Jamie. We have a lot of people who listen here who are thinking about what's next for them. They're thinking, I'm ready for that next thing. What would be a key piece of advice that you might give someone who's considering their next move?
If their next move is a promotion, a raise, or leveling up where they are, my number one advice would be start 3 to 6 months ahead of the formal conversation. And I say that because we're recording this in late 2024, right, in November. And most corporations who run on a calendar basis, they have already finalized their 2025 budgets sometime around October.
Right.
And if you want to be, growing your footprint where you are, you want to make sure you front run that decision-making process. And this is also like the antidote to tiara syndrome. It's like, don't wait. Waiting is not a strategy, but start to engage in just a frank, honest conversation with your supervisor, with a decision maker, or maybe even your skip level. Just tell them that you want to grow here and you have some ideas.
Yeah.
And start planting those seeds earlier than later.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And if you are wanting to move out of where you are, believe me, I've done that many times.
Yeah.
My number one advice would be, there's so much noise all around, pivoting, all of that. But ask yourself, why not bet on yourself?
I love that.
I tell people, if you really, really don't like the office politics where you are, you can vote. You can, number one, vote for yourself, bet on yourself. Number two, you can vote with your tribe, right? You can cultivate allies or find friends where you are or elsewhere. And number three, you vote with your feet. So vote for yourself, bet on yourself, vote with your tribe, and also vote with your feet.
Well, you just gave us about 4 to 5 really great points of advice. I asked for one and I got a bargain here. That was great. Really wonderful. Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your story and for sharing your experience and how all of that kind of merged together to bring you to the point you're at today. And I wish you all the best and thank you for being here.
This is a great conversation. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Jamie Lee. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode number 266. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. If you're feeling it, please help me to inspire more people to grow their careers by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button. Leave an honest rating and brief review. Those reviews help boost the visibility of the podcast, which will help more people. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles, and Design a Career that Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.